Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are walking into a minefield.
Yeah, quite literally.
And I mean that in every sense of the word.
Okay.
We are going into territory that, well, territory that most corporate media and frankly most educational institutions have spent the last decade strictly declaring off limits.
It's the ultimate forbidden conversation.
Right. We are looking at the machinery of modern institutions, specifically the schools that your sons attend and the courts that judge them. And we are asking a question that makes people very, very uncomfortable.
Which is whether the architecture of the system is actively designed to dismantle male authority.
Exactly. Is the system rigged against men? And look, we aren't just speculating today. We have a source text that acts like a flamethrower to the current mainstream narrative.
It really does. It takes no prisoners.
We're doing a forensic analysis of an ebook called Restorative Injustice, subtitled Encouraging Disorder, Suicidal Empathy, and Weakness for Criminals.
By Conrad Riker.
By Conrad Riker, yes. Now, usually on this deep dive, we kind of ease into these topics. We warm up. Not today.
No, you really can't with this material.
If you are someone who believes the standard line that schools are politically neutral, that restorative justice is just about, being nice, or that the system is functioning fine, this is going to be a massive shock to your system.
Riker actually puts a warning label on the very first page of the book.
He does.
He explicitly states, quote, "This book is not for the weak. It's not for the cribullies who flinch at truth."
I love that phrase, cry bullies.
It's incredibly accurate for what he describes. He says, if you need a safe space, turn it off. Close the book. This is for the men who feel like they've been gaslit by society and really want to see the blueprint of how it happened.
So that's the audience we are talking to today. If you are that listener, the guy who suspects the game is rigged, but maybe just can't quite prove it, you don't have the data, this deep dive is for you.
It's giving you the vocabulary for what you're seeing.
Right. And look, guys, the algorithm absolutely hates this content. It actively suppresses discussions about male authority, about institutional capture by Marxists and feminists. It just gets buried.
Oh, instantly. They don't want this reaching the people who need it.
So if you want this information to survive, if you want other men to hear this, you need to engage right now. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel.
It actually makes a huge difference.
It's the only way we beat the shadow bans. And honestly, if this resonates with you as we get into it, you need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Playbooks and buy Restorative Injustice.
Let's get the ebook.
Getting the primary source, keeping it ranking in the charts, that's how we fight the censorship. So go to Amazon Kindle or Google Playbooks, grab it, and follow the author on Substack at Conrad Riker.
Definitely.
All right, let's get into the meat of this. The title itself is a provocation, right? Restorative Injustice. Because we hear restorative justice everywhere now.
It's ubiquitous. It's in corporate HR. It's in criminal courts. And it is absolutely the dominant philosophy in public schools today.
And the pitch is always so seductive.
Right. It's always sold as healing. It's about community. It's about bringing people together.
Who doesn't want healing? I mean, it sounds great on paper.
But Riker argues this is a linguistic trap. He calls it a Trojan horse.
A Trojan horse, meaning it looks like a gift.
Exactly. It looks like a method for reconciliation.
Yeah.
But once it gets inside the walls of the institution, its function completely changes.
So what's the actual function, according to the book?
Riker argues the true function of restorative justice is to completely dismantle the concept of consequences.
Meaning punishment is just gone.
Gone. He says the traditional system of discipline, where actions have equal and opposite reactions, where bad behavior is actually punished, is viewed by these progressive activists as inherently oppressive.
Oppressive.
Specifically, they view punishment, any form of top-down discipline, as a tool of quote-unquote patriarchal dominance.
Wait. So let me make sure I'm getting this right. If I punish a kid for, say, hitting another student, the book says these activists believe I am upholding the patriarchy.
According to the theory Riker exposes, yes, absolutely. You are enforcing a power-over dynamic, which they code as white and male.
That's insane.
It is. So their solution is to replace the punishment with circles, empathy sessions.
Talking it out.
Right. And this isn't just some fringe theoretical college paper. The book details a case in Portland that is, honestly, it's hard to believe it's real, but he brings the documentation.
Let's hear it.
So there's a student in a Portland high school who threw a desk, a heavy metal school desk.
At another student?
No.
At the teacher.
He threw a metal desk at the teacher.
Yes.
I mean, that is a physical assault with a weapon. You could kill someone with a metal desk.
Right. In any functioning, rational system, that is an immediate expulsion and a police report, period.
Obviously.
But in the restorative framework, the student was not suspended.
You're kidding.
Nope. The student wasn't suspended. The teacher was disciplined.
The teacher who got a desk thrown at him? Yes. The administration called the teacher in and told him that his reaction, his entirely natural anger and fear after having a desk thrown at his head, had, quote, perpetuated a culture of punitive dominance.
I don't even have words for that. Punitive dominance.
Because he was mad. He almost got his head caved in.
Exactly. And it gets worse. He was officially ordered to write an apology letter to the student.
Hold on. Stop. The teacher had to apologize to the attacker.
Yes. He had to write a letter to reconnect empathetically, and he had to acknowledge that he hadn't considered the student's underlying trauma before the incident.
That is just, it's evil. That's a total inversion of reality.
That's the exact word Riker uses, the inversion. It shifts the entire focus from actions have consequences to behavior is merely a symptom of systemic oppression.
So if the kid throws a desk, it's not the kid's fault.
Right, it's the system's fault. And if you, as the male authority figure in that room, try to enforce order, you become the avatar of that oppressive system. You are the villain. But if I'm a student and I'm watching this play out, if I know I can throw a desk at my teacher, and not only do I not get expelled, but I get a written apology from the guy I assaulted, what stops me from just doing it again tomorrow?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And Riker makes a brilliant point here. He argues that that is the actual point.
You know, the chaos.
They want the disorder because chaos validates their overarching political theory.
How so?
Think about it. If the classroom is completely falling apart, if violence is up, they can point to the wreckage and say, see, the old ways don't work. Western civilization is failing. We need our utopian replacement.
Oh, wow.
It's manufactured failure. It's like a mechanic breaking your engine on purpose so he can sell you a completely different, extremely expensive, experimental type of car.
That makes terrifying sense, and that leads perfectly into the gender component, which really is the spine of this entire book.
Right.
Riker isn't just talking about general chaos in the halls.
No, he's highly specific.
He's talking about a targeted war on male authority. And he uses a term that, honestly, it chilled me when I read it, the feminine override protocol.
Yeah, that's a central concept in the book.
What exactly is the feminine override protocol?
This is a bureaucratic pattern he observed across multiple different school districts. Here is how the scenario usually plays out. A male teacher, usually a guy with some experience, maybe he's a coach or a military veteran, reports a discipline issue.
He draws a line in the sand.
Right. He sends a defiant, disruptive kid to the office. Now, in the past, that report went to a principal, often a male principal, who backed up the teacher.
Action, consequence.
But under the restorative system, that report doesn't go to a traditional principal. It goes to a student wellness panel or a restorative justice team.
And who is on those teams?
Riker notes that these panels are overwhelmingly female, and they're almost always staffed by non-classroom personnel.
So people who aren't actually teaching.
Right. Social workers, counselors, administrative support staff, people who don't have to face 30 hostile teenagers every day.
People who aren't in the trenches.
Exactly. And the data Riker presents shows that these panels override the male teacher's disciplinary decision 80% of the time.
80%. That's not an accident, that's a policy.
It's a protocol. They will send the kid back to class with no punishment, and they'll put a note in the teacher's file using language like, he misinterpreted her tone, or his posture was too aggressive, or he didn't consider the student's emotional state.
So they completely neuter the male teacher in front of the students.
It effectively strips him of all authority. It sends a very clear, very public message to the students that the man in the room has absolutely no actual power.
It pathologizes his leadership.
Yes.
It treats a man simply saying no or stop as if the word itself is an act of violence.
It frames traditional male boundary setting as toxic.
And this bleeds directly into how they view boys' mental health, too. There's that statistic in the book about male suicide that it completely flips the mainstream narrative on its head.
This is one of the most crucial data points in the entire deep dive today, because we are constantly, relentlessly told by the media that toxic masculinity causes male suicide.
Right. The idea that because men are stoic, because we don't sit around sharing our feelings and crying, we break.
And the mainstream solution pushed by these wellness panels is always men need to open up, men need to cry more, boys need to act more like girls.
But Riker cites data that suggests the exact opposite is true.
Completely the opposite. He cites a comprehensive study showing that men who strongly align with traditional masculine traits, traits like stoicism, competitiveness, resilience, the desire to provide and protect those men, are actually 68% less likely to attempt suicide.
Let me repeat that for the listener. 68% less likely. So being traditionally masculine isn't toxic, it's protective.
It's a shield against despair.
It gives a man purpose, it gives him stability.
But here is the kicker, and this is where the institutional capture becomes so malicious. Despite those stoic boys being at a statistically much lower risk for self-harm, schools flag them for mental health interventions 3 times more often than other boys.
Unbelievable. So the system sees a boy who is quiet, strong, handling his business, and not crying in class, and it thinks there is something deeply wrong with him.
They assume he's repressing his trauma.
They view male stability as a pathology.
Exactly. Riker calls it the boyhood deficit model. They fundamentally view boys as defective girls who need to be cured of their testosterone.
It's sick.
And when this psychological mindset meets school policy, you get what Riker calls the empathy escalation loop.
Break that down for us.
Okay, so the system inherently prioritizes female-coded empathy. The primary question is always, how does everyone feel about what happened? They prioritize that over male-coded authority, which asks, did you follow the rules?
Facts over feelings, basically.
Right, so they choose feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't enforce the rules, it inevitably leads to chaos in the school. Students run wild.
Which makes everyone, including the teachers, actually feel unsafe.
Exactly, the physical environment degrades. So the administration looks at this chaos, and what is their solution? They don't bring back rules.
Yeah.
They say clearly there's too much trauma, we need even more empathy.
So they double down on the thing that caused the problem, which just sidelines the men even further. It's a complete death spiral for the institution.
And it drives highly competent men completely out of the profession. Riker tells a story. This is from a district in Tacoma, Washington. It perfectly illustrates this spiral.
Yeah, the science teacher, walk us through that one.
There's a male science teacher running a high school chemistry lab. He had a female student in the class who had a documented history of severe behavioral outbursts.
Okay.
One day, she gets angry and she takes a beaker of hydrochloric acid and pours it all over another student's backpack.
Hydrochloric acid.
Yes,
We aren't talking about a kid spitting a spitball or throwing an eraser. That is literally a chemical weapon.
it burns through skin. It could have blinded someone. In a sane world, that is immediate expulsion, and she is leaving the school in handcuffs.
So what did this district do?
They held a restorative circle.
You have to be kidding me.
They forced the male chemistry teacher to sit down in a circle with the girl who poured the acid, and a facilitator led a discussion about power imbalances in the classroom.
So they blamed him.
The explicit implication of the meeting was that his authoritarian style of classroom management had provoked her trauma response, which caused her to pour the acid.
They made it his fault.
Yes. So he quit. He handed in his keys and left the teaching profession entirely.
A guy teaching hard science, driven out.
And Riker argues that is not a bug in the system. That is a feature. The system is functioning exactly as designed. They want the men who believe in objective rules and safety to leave.
It's an ideological purge, and this connects to the philosophical roots of this whole movement. Let's talk about Chapter 4, which Riker titles The Weaponization of Ubuntu.
This is fascinating.
Because I've seen this word, Ubuntu. You see it on posters in corporate HR offices, on school walls. It's an African tribal philosophy, right? It translates roughly to, I am because we are.
That's the bumper sticker slogan, yeah. Progressives absolutely love to quote it to justify collective guilt and collective policy.
But Riker argues this is actually a massive case of cultural appropriation.
It's the worst kind, because they are stripping a very complex, very rigorous tribal philosophy completely out of its historical context to serve a modern Western political agenda.
Because real tribal life, actual survival in a harsh environment, isn't just a hippie drum circle where everyone shares their feelings.
Far from it. Riker explains that in the actual African tribal societies where Ubuntu originated, there were incredibly strict hierarchies.
Men were in charge.
There was strong, undeniable male leadership. And crucially, there were severe, immediate consequences for misbehavior.
Because if you screw up in a tribe, people die.
Exactly. If you acted selfishly or violently and hurt the tribe, the punishment was swift. It was physical. It was sometimes brutal. Because the integrity and survival of the collective tribe mattered far more than the temporary feelings of the individual who broke the rules.
That makes total sense. So the progressive educators just take the collectivist part, the we're all in this together part, but they completely leave out the accountability and the discipline.
Right, they turn a philosophy of survival into what Riker calls a collectivist cudgel. They use it as a weapon to excuse failure and punish strength.
There was that case in Minneapolis he used to illustrate this, the knife attack.
Yes, this case is the perfect example of fake Ubuntu in action. A white student in a Minneapolis school was attacked in the hallway by another classmate wielding a knife.
A deadly weapon. Again.
Yeah, right. The victim, the kid being attacked, defended himself. He fought back physically to disarm the attacker and save his own life.
Which any man should teach his son to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the school administration suspended the victim, the kid who got attacked, because, quote, he engaged in violence.
He was fighting a guy who had a knife. What was he supposed to do? Bleed on him?
It didn't matter. The school claimed a zero-tolerance policy for violence of any kind.
Okay, but what about the attacker? The kid who brought the knife to school and started stabbing?
He was not suspended.
Let me guess. A restorative circle?
Close. He was given a one-on-one counseling session and assigned to write a poem about his feelings.
A poem for attempted murder.
And the principal explicitly cited Ubuntu in the disciplinary report. He said Ubuntu teaches nonviolence and reconciliation.
Wow.
So the attacker was treated as a victim of systemic forces who just needed healing, while the actual victim who defended himself was punished for breaking the peace.
That is insane. It's the weaponization of Ubuntu, just like Riker says. It is used to punish self-defense and enable violent predators.
But Riker traces this ideology even further back. Beyond the cultural appropriation, he looks at the actual Marxist roots of modern pedagogy. He points the finger directly at a guy named Paulo Freire.
Paulo Freire. He wrote Pedagogy of the Oppressed, right? I know that name. It's basically standard reading in every university teacher college in the country.
It is the absolute Bible of modern education theory. Riker notes that 78% of all restorative justice curricula cite Freire as a foundational text.
78%.
But here's the thing listeners need to understand.
Yeah.
Freire wasn't writing about how to get fourth graders to sit still and learn long division.
Right.
Freire was a Brazilian Marxist. He was writing a manual on how to overthrow the government.
Yeah.
He viewed education not as a way to transfer knowledge, but solely as a tool for political revolution.
So when these teachers are using methods based on Freire, they aren't actually trying to manage a classroom. They are literally trying to foment a revolution.
Riker argues that modern teachers are actively trained in college to see themselves not as authority figures imparting facts, but as co-liberators.
Co-liberators.
Their goal is to partner with the students to incite a class war against oppressive structures.
And in the context of a modern Western public school, what is the oppressive structure?
The oppressive structure is the rule of law. It's punctuality, it's objective grading, mathematics, and, of course, white men.
So it's ideological warfare perfectly disguised as classroom management.
Exactly.
But none of this happens in a vacuum. You can't transform an entire nation's school system into a Marxist training camp without massive amounts of money. And Riker does a deep dive into the funding, the ESA Title IV grants. We are talking about billions of dollars.
You always have to follow the money. None of this institutional capture sticks without a financial incentive. The federal government has about $1.2 billion available in these Title IV grants.
Okay.
But schools only get their piece of that billion-dollar pie if they officially adopt non-punitive discipline models.
So there's a string attached.
A huge one. They have to prove to the federal government, with data, that they are drastically reducing their suspension and expulsion rates.
Okay, let's play this out. If I am a district superintendent and my district is broke and I desperately want that $1 million grant to balance my budget, I have to show my suspension numbers going down.
Correct. And there are basically two ways you can reduce suspensions. Method one, you do the hard work. You actually improve student behavior. You involve fathers, you enforce discipline early, you change the culture. That takes years and it's incredibly difficult.
Right. And method two.
Method two, you just stop suspending the kids who behave badly. You issue a memo that says we no longer suspend for fighting, insubordination, or vandalism. It takes 5 minutes, and boom, your suspension rate drops to 0.
They're just cooking the books.
Riker calls it the data deception. It's exactly like a city mayor going on TV and saying crime is miraculously dropped to 0, when the reality is he just ordered the police to stop arresting criminals and writing tickets.
If you stop recording the incidents, the spreadsheet looks fantastic.
But the reality on the ground for the people living it is utterly terrifying. Riker looks at the data out of Oakland, California.
What happened there?
Oakland went all in on these restorative grants. And sure enough, after they implemented the policies, their official suspension rates dropped dramatically. The district celebrated. They got the money.
A massive success on paper?
On paper. But Riker dug into the police reports and the hospital records. While suspensions dropped, actual violent incidents in the school's physical assaults, weapons charges rose by 62%.
62% increase in violence. So the schools became objectively more dangerous, they became war zones, but on paper they looked equitable.
And the teachers are the ones who suffer the collateral damage of this lie. Riker discusses a psychological concept called moral injury.
Moral injury. I usually hear that in relation to combat veterans.
Right, it's a term used for soldiers who are forced by their chain of command to do things that violently contradict their deep moral conscience. Riker found that 74% of teachers operating under these restorative models report suffering from moral injury.
Because they know what they're doing is wrong.
One male teacher he interviewed described his job as, quote, covering up a crime scene every single day.
Man, that is dark.
They know they are betraying the good, quiet students who just want to learn by letting the violent predators run the hallways without consequences. But if they speak up, they get fired. They have no choice.
That is genuinely soul-crushing, and I think that brings us perfectly to segment 5, which might be the most philosophical, but also the most dangerous part of the book. Chapter 5 is called The Cult of Feelings, and this is where Reichel details the actual death of objective truth.
This is the part that should scare anyone worried about the long-term survival of our civilization.
It's beyond just schoolyard fights.
Right. Riker cites a Yale study that analyzed how these progressive disciplinary hearings actually function in practice. The researchers watched hundreds of hours of these restorative circles.
And what did they find?
They found that the outcome of the hearing almost always favored the person who displayed the strongest emotional reaction.
Regardless of the facts.
Regardless of the facts. Even when there was literal video evidence showing who started the fight, the mediator would side with whoever cried the hardest or claimed the most trauma.
So let me get this straight. If you and I get into a dispute, and I am clearly on video throwing the first punch, but during the hearing I can cry louder than you and talk about my generational trauma, I win.
In a cult of feelings, yes. Your emotion is treated as a higher form of truth than objective video evidence.
That incentivizes absolute sociopathy.
It leads to what Riker brilliantly terms the victimhood as currency market. If society decides that being a victim gets you out of trouble, or gets you social status, or gets you money, human beings will naturally manufacture victimhood to get paid.
It's basic economics. You subsidize a behavior, you get more of it. He talks about the victim points system in Denver.
Literally a point system. In a Denver school district, Riker uncovered internal documents where students could actually earn points or academic leeway by claiming various intersections of trauma or systemic oppression.
They gamified being a victim.
They did. But the absolute most absurd example in the book, and honestly you have to laugh so you don't just completely lose your mind, is the Oakland Healing Grant.
Oh, right, the Kale story. You have to tell the Kale story.
So Oakland had this cash grant program, real taxpayer money, available for students who could prove they were victims of systemic oppression. A high school student applied for a cash scholarship,
Okay.
and his official claim of oppression on the application was that his mother forced him to eat kale.
You have to be joking, Kale. The vegetable.
I wish I were joking. The student claimed that being made to eat kale was a form of, quote, nutritional oppression and intergenerational dietary trauma.
And they threw out the application, right?
No. He qualified, they approved it, he got the money.
He got paid because he don't like his vegetables. It's a literal clown world.
It perfectly illustrates Riker's point. When victimhood becomes a literal currency, people will just counterfeit it. And the institutional system has completely removed any mechanism to say, hey, that's ridiculous, grow up. Because judging someone's lived experience is now considered an act of violence.
But this gets incredibly dangerous when you apply this mindset to things that actually matter for keeping a civilization running, like math.
The math liberation framework.
Yeah.
This is where it goes from silly to suicidal. Riker discusses how these same educational activists now heavily promote the idea that objective mathematics is inherently racist.
The idea that 2 + 2 = 4 is somehow oppressive.
Yes. They argue that insisting on a single correct objective answer in math class is a form of white supremacy and colonial violence. They actually call it numerical nihilism.
They want to decolonize algebra.
Exactly, because math doesn't care about your feelings.
But bridges don't care about your feelings either. Physics doesn't care about your lived experience. If you build a bridge using empathy math, where 2 plus 2 equals whatever the engineer feels like that day, the bridge collapses and people die.
And that is exactly Riker's core warning. He writes, quote, "You cannot feel your way to a working nuclear reactor."
Damn, that's a great line.
If we deliberately raise an entire generation of children to believe that objective truth, rigorous standards, and correct answers are just tools of patriarchal oppression, we destroy our ability to maintain a complex technological civilization.
We are systematically dismantling the basic competence required to just keep the lights on and the water running.
We are breeding a society that cannot sustain itself.
It's terrifying. And as Riker points out, this isn't just a localized problem happening in a few crazy American cities. This is a coordinated global agenda.
Yes. Let's pivot to chapter 19, the march to collectivism. He really zooms out here to show the bigger picture.
Because it's not just blue-haired teachers making this up on their own.
No, the marching orders come from the very top. He points directly to the United Nations, specifically UNESCO, and a foundational document called the Delors Report.
What's the Delors Report?
It's a long-term strategic plan, going back decades, to systematically replace sovereign national school curricula with what they call common human values, globalism.
So the goal is to weaken the nation state itself.
Exactly. You untether the children from their specific national identity, their history, their pride.
They don't want these kids to grow up thinking of themselves as Americans or British or whatever. They want them to be global citizens.
Right. And Riker highlights exactly how this manifests in the classroom. You see schools actively replacing units on the U.S. Constitution or the Founding Fathers, with curriculum focused on global empathy standards and climate justice.
They are erasing the nation. And you see it in civil institutions, too. He brings up the Boy Scouts.
The Boy Scouts is a tragic example. This was an institution specifically founded to create patriotic, physically capable, morally straight young men.
God and country.
But under pressure from these exact same ideological groups, they systematically removed patriotism from their core values, replacing it with, quote, global responsibility.
They gutted the very soul of the organization.
Because, as Riker argues, the ultimate goal of the globalist framework is to make children feel like they belong to the world.
And when they say the world, they really mean the international state bureaucracy.
Exactly. They want children to belong to the state rather than belonging to their fathers, their families, or their sovereign nations.
He calls it neo-tribal collectivism.
Yes. And the sinister part of neo-tribal collectivism is that while it claims to be about global unity, in practice, it aggressively trains kids to view themselves primarily through the lens of racial group identity.
Right, intersectionality.
Instead of individual rights, you are defined by your racial tribe. Riker argues this is essentially Civil War prep.
Civil War prep, how so?
Because if you erase the unifying concept of e pluribus unum out of many, one, and you replace it with a system that tells kids, stick to your racial identity group and constantly fight the other groups for systemic power, you are setting the stage for endless tribal conflict.
You are guaranteeing a fractured, violent society.
Precisely.
Man. So let's take a breath. We have detailed a system that seems to hate men, it hates objective truth, it hates the nation state, and it actively subsidizes chaos.
Bleak.
It feels hopeless, like taking the black pill. But I want to be clear to the listeners, Riker doesn't just sit there and complain for 300 pages. He offers actual solutions. This isn't just a grievance book, it's a tactical manual.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
He treats the book itself as a weapon. In the final chapters, he says, this book is not just a complaint, it's a manual for reclamation.
So what are the fixes? If you are a father listening to this, how do we reclaim order from this mess?
He starts with the absolute biological basics for boys.
Yeah.
Solution number 1, return recess.
Just let them play outside.
But he means real, unstructured physical recess. Wrestling, running, roughhousing, climbing things, not the highly supervised mindfulness walks they do now.
Right.
Boys physically need aggressive physical release to regulate their nervous systems and their behavior. If you bottle that kinetic energy up all day in a chair, it eventually explodes.
Let boys be boys. It's a cliche because it's a biological truth.
Exactly. Solution number 2, bring back competition.
Winners and losers.
We have to destroy the everyone gets a trophy mentality. It completely neutralizes the natural male drive to improve. Boys fundamentally thrive on hierarchy and competition.
They want to know where they stand.
And losing is actually good for them. Losing teaches resilience. It teaches a boy that if he wants respect, he has to work harder and be better next time. The current system robs them of that growth.
What's a third fix?
Shop class. This is a huge point for Riker.
I love this one.
We have to teach boys to manipulate the physical world again, build things with wood and metal, fix engines, handle fire and electricity.
Because there is something deeply primal about building something with your own two hands.
When a boy sees that he can actually affect the physical reality around him through his own skill and sweat, he gains a bedrock confidence that sitting in an empathy circle can never, ever give him.
It grounds you in reality. You can't lie to a piece of wood. You can't gaslight an engine. It either fits or it doesn't. It starts or it doesn't.
Precisely. The physical world enforces objective truth. Solution number 4, male mentorship.
Bringing the men back into the building.
Riker cites an incredibly successful grassroots program called Man Up Mondays. A school was having massive behavioral issues, so they just started bringing in dads, uncles, military veterans, and local tradesmen to walk the halls on Mondays.
No formal degrees in restorative justice required.
None. Just strong, masculine presences in the school. And the energy changed overnight. The boys literally sat up straighter. The violence plummeted immediately.
Just men being men around boys, showing them what actual controlled masculine strength looks like.
Exactly. But Riker says the biggest shift of all has to be internal, inside the minds of the men reading the book.
Men have to stop apologizing.
Men must stop apologizing for their DNA. He says you have to absolutely reject the progressive label of toxic. You have to understand in your bones that order, physical discipline, and stoicism are not disorders. They are strengths.
They are the immune system of civilization.
Without those male traits, the whole thing falls apart. He frames this as the boyhood deficit model versus the pipeline to irrelevance.
Right, because the media always talks about the school to prison pipeline.
Riker says that's a distraction. The real threat for the vast majority of boys today isn't going to prison. The real threat is irrelevance.
Explain that.
By systematically removing physical challenge, danger, and competition from their lives, we artificially lower their testosterone. Low testosterone biologically leads to behavioral apathy, lack of drive, and just checking out of society.
You're creating a lost generation.
Millions of young men who just don't participate. They stay in their parents' basements playing video games and watching porn because the real world has explicitly told them your masculinity is toxic, we don't need you, and we don't want you.
And a society without strong, participating young men collapses.
Every single time in human history. Men are the builders and the protectors. If you culturally convince them that building and protecting are toxic behaviors, the walls come down and the barbarians walk right in.
Wow. This has been intense. I mean, this is heavy stuff, so let's bring it all home. What is the ultimate takeaway for the listener right now?
If we synthesize everything in the book, Restorative Injustice is arguing that the current system is actually working exactly as designed.
It's not broken.
It isn't broken. It is a highly tuned machine designed to produce compliant, weak subjects, not strong, independent citizens. And it specifically targets men, because men are the last line of defense for traditional order.
Break the men, break the society.
If you can break the men, you can reshape the society into whatever collectivist nightmare you want.
That is exactly why you have to read this book. You need the data. You need the historical arguments. Because when you go to that school board meeting, or when you get into an argument with your progressive brother-in-law who thinks you're just a crazy right-wing conspiracy theorist, you need to be armed with the facts.
You can't fight their emotional gaslighting with your own feelings. You fight it with hard evidence.
And Riker gives you all the receipts.
He absolutely does.
I want to leave you guys with a final thought from the book that has just stuck with me since I read it. It's about a case in Colorado. There was a teenage boy who attended his younger brother's funeral.
Tragic situation.
Unimaginably tragic. But during the funeral, this teenage boy remained stoic. He held it together. He didn't break down crying in front of everyone.
He was being a rock for his parents.
Exactly. But a school counselor who attended the funeral observed him not crying. And the next week, that counselor officially reported the boy's family to Child Protective Services for, quote, emotional noncompliance and suspected trauma repression.
Think about the absolute sickness of that. The state literally tried to intervene and investigate a family because a young man was displaying traditional masculine strength during a crisis.
They wanted to punish him for not breaking. So, to every man listening to this right now, I want you to ask yourself a question. Are you raising your sons to be safe for this system?
Are you raising them to be compliant, highly emotional, and harmless?
Or are you raising them to be strong for the world? Because I promise you, the real world is not a safe space. And this institutional system will not protect them when things get hard.
Cultivating male strength is the only real safety you have.
That is the bottom line. Look, guys, do yourself a massive favor right now. Pull out your phone, go to Amazon Kindle or Google Playbooks, search for Restorative Injustice by Conrad Riker.
Buy the ebook.
Buy it. Read it this weekend. And leave a review. The review sections are probably an absolute war zone right now with activists trying to tank the rating, so get in there and fight back.
And make sure you follow the author directly. He's on Substack at Conrad Riker. He posts deep dive updates and data there that you will never see allowed on the mainstream corporate platforms.
Go support him. And finally, before you click away, hit that like button, subscribe to our show. We rely entirely on you guys to help us break the algorithm's suppression.
We can't do it without you.
This is forbidden knowledge, and we need your help to spread it to the men who need to hear it. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. Stay strong out there.
Stay strong.